Good evening. Man, that was pathetic. Good evening. Thank you, that's better. We want to welcome everyone here to our midweek Bible study at the Airport Road Church of Christ on this Wednesday, April the 2nd, 2025. Y'all, it's April. Can y'all believe it? Crazy. But I'm enjoying the weather. How many of y'all like that nice breeze we had blowing today? Yeah, that was nice. All right, we're going to begin with number 378 this evening. 378. Just a few more days to be filled with praise and to tell the old story. Then when twilight falls and my Savior calls, I shall go to Him in glory. I'll exchange my cross for a starry crown where the gates swing outward never. At His feet I'll lay every burden down, and with Jesus reign forever. Just a few more years with their toil and tears, and the journey will be ended. Then I'll be with Him where the tide of time with eternity is blended. I'll exchange my cross for a starry crown where the gates swing outward never. At His feet I'll lay every burden down, and with Jesus reign forever. What a joy 'twill be when I wake to see Him for whom my heart is burning. Never more to sigh, never more to die, for that day my heart is yearning. I'll exchange my cross for a starry crown where the gates swing outward never. At His feet I'll lay every burden down, and with Jesus reign forever. We'll now be led in our opening prayer.
Pray with me. Dear Lord, we come before you tonight asking that you watch over this service, guide this service, and everything that is said and done be in accordance to your will and easily understood. We ask that you be with anyone that's not here for whatever reason, and that you give them whatever they need, physical, spiritual, or mental, so that they can come back and be with the family. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
389. Would you live for Jesus and be always pure and good? Would you walk with Him within the narrow road? Would you have Him bear your burden, carry all your load? Let Him have His way with thee. His power can make you what you ought to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see 'twas best for Him to have His way with thee. Would you have Him make you free and follow at His call? Would you know the peace that comes by giving all? Would you have Him save you so that you need never fall? Let Him have His way with thee. His power can make you what you ought to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul, and you will see 'twas best for Him to have His way with thee. Would you in His kingdom find a place of constant rest? Would you prove Him true each providential test? Would you in his service labor always at your best? Let him have his way with thee. His power can make you what you ought to be. His blood can cleanse your heart and make you free. His love can fill your soul and you will see 'twas best for him to have his way with thee.
Good evening. Welcome to our midweek service here at Airport Road. It's good to see all of you here tonight. A few announcements before we are dismissed to go to our classes. John Morris's memorial service will be this Friday at Brackney Funeral Home. The viewing is at 10 o'clock. The service will be at 11 o'clock. And we will be feeding the family here at the church building after the service. So if you could please drop off any dishes by 11:30 that morning, that would be much appreciated. And the church will be providing the chicken. We're going to be feeding about 20 people. Stephanie Boston, a former member here, Doc Holliday's daughter, is having some serious health issues, and she has requested prayers. Carlene's surgery was successful. The doctor feels that they removed all the cancer. The biopsy will show that, whether that be the case or not, in a week or two, or actually about a half a week now, I guess. They need to do any preventative care if need be. Bernice and Melva's brother, Colin McKee, has prostate cancer and will be on radiation. His sisters request prayers. Teresa and Clay White are both in pretty bad shape physically. There is a sign-up sheet in the foyer to take meals to them, and right now neither one of them are able to drive, so we need to take the food to their house. Please refer to the list of prayer requests that are sent out every week by email. They appear on the PowerPoint announcements, and there's some posted on the bulletin board as well. We could use some help tonight right after the services conclude to set up some tables in the fellowship room. Nina and Jeanette made it safely to Phoenix. They were delayed, but they finally did make it. Their new address will be posted on the bulletin board. Mark, I am ready to head to Panama, and I'll be gone. I will be leaving Monday, be gone until April the 18th. There's a correction here. The SIS meeting is on the 14th, not on the 7th of April. Romeo is on the 8th. That's next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, at Samuel's Roadhouse, 5:30. There's a sign-up sheet for that. And the extravaganza is April the 26th. See the bulletin board and sign up for that. I guess that's it. You're dismissed to go to your classes.
Ooh, Rylan, turn me down just a little. Actually, turn me down a good bit. Hey, what did you say? All righty, we are beginning a new study tonight. We finished up our study in the book of Acts last week, and I hope y'all enjoyed that. I hope you learned a lot from that. So tonight we're going to be beginning something new, and this will run through the end of May. And then beginning the first Wednesday in June, we'll be beginning our summer series once again. We've got a lot of good speakers lined up for this summer once again, and so I hope you'll be making your plans to attend that. But for this next 2 months, we're going to be looking at the Proverbs. And you can see up there, tonight we're going to start in the book of 1 Kings. And then, what are you shaking your head for?
You broke the PowerPoint rules. You can't see what you're asking us to
I know. It's not the PowerPoint, it's the projector. We're working on that. So if you can't see, just turn around and look at the monitor behind you. Do what?
the end user, not the projector.
Well, I'm not going to throw Mark under the bus because he made this PowerPoint, so don't blame him.
It looks great.
Yeah, it looks great. We can see it perfectly. Yeah. Hey, just some of y'all. All right. We're going to start off in 1 Kings. So if you want to be opening there, 1 Kings will be in chapters 3 and 4. And then we're going to move into Proverbs. And then the rest of our time for this study will be spent primarily in the Proverbs. Okay? And the topic, just in case you're wondering, is uncommon sense wisdom. So you've heard of common sense wisdom. This is uncommon sense wisdom from the book of Proverbs. Okay? So that's what we're going to be looking at. But before we actually get into our passage, got a question. When you were in school, what was your most favorite subject? Break. Study hall. Band. Gym. Oh, someone liked gym. Anybody like gym? Some people like the gym. Okay. Wood shop. I like drama. That was my favorite class. Art. Okay. All righty.
History.
History.
Well, I would say English, but nobody would believe it. As a former English teacher, it's true.
Okay. All righty. Any others? Which one did you least enjoy? Science. Oh. Yeah, math was mine. I couldn't stand math. We got
Former science teacher, I enjoyed that.
Oh boy. Did anybody enjoy every class they took? Why not?
Sometimes it was the teacher.
Okay. Sometimes it was the teacher.
Good subject, but the teacher was less enjoyable.
Okay. So sometimes the subject can be enjoyable, but the teacher makes it unenjoyable for whatever reason. Okay. What about the reverse of that? You had a subject that maybe wasn't your favorite, but the teacher was just awesome. Anybody have somebody like that? Okay. All right. Well, very few people will enjoy every subject because we've all got different interests and different abilities, right? And we all have our different aptitudes. Some people are better at math, some people are better at science, some people are better at English, some people are better at break. Okay? But we've all got our different things. Will Rogers, what's going on in this PowerPoint? Will Rogers said it this way: all of us are ignorant just on different subjects. And there's a lot of truth to that, isn't there? Okay? I'm going to read it again. All of us are ignorant just on different subjects, okay? You don't necessarily have to answer this question, okay, but you can if you want to. Are there any topics or areas of discussion that you get into with people that you're just clueless about? Okay, yes. I told you didn't have to answer it, okay? And then I'm waiting for an answer, okay? So we understand that, all right? Nobody knows it all, but you've probably known people, or maybe you know people right now, Frank's already laughing, that think they know it all, don't they? Okay? What would your definition of a know-it-all be? I'm not looking for a dictionary definition, your definition. Okay, you can't tell them a thing. Why? Because they already know it. Yeah. What did you say, Matt? They've already got an answer regardless if it's a right or wrong. And I think that's a big part there. Okay? They've always got an answer. And a lot of times those answers are wrong, but they'll never admit it. Okay? The next question is, how do you feel whenever you're around someone like that, someone who's a know-it-all? Okay, you're determined to trip them up. What else?
Stay away from them.
Okay, you want to stay away from them. Why, Shirley?
Well, because they know it all.
Okay,
You can't talk to them
Right.
because they know it all.
okay,
They think yours.
okay. Yeah, a lot of times they treat you as though you're stupid, you're ignorant, you don't know anything, and if what you say differs or disagrees with what they say, what's generally their attitude? Condescending. Okay. What else? You're wrong. You're the one that's wrong. Okay. A lot of times know-it-alls are stubborn, aren't they? I heard a up here. I think Matt might know one. A couple, okay. Why are some people unwilling to admit that there are some things they don't know? Okay, it's a perceived sign of weakness. If they don't have an answer or they don't know, then they feel like they are weak, inadequate. Okay? Anything else?
Trying to hide their weaknesses by looking superior to everyone else.
Okay, they're trying to hide their weaknesses by looking superior to everyone else. All right, that's a big one for a lot of people. They're trying to be in control. Okay? And in order to be in control, they've got to know it all, right? Okay. All right. Well, in this series that we're going to be looking at, for the next several weeks, as I said, our goal is going to be to pick up some uncommon sense wisdom for daily living from someone who really did know it all, and that was Solomon. And we're going to look at kind of the beginning of his story, how he acquired wisdom, how he demonstrated that wisdom, and then we're going to, like I said, move into the Proverbs tonight and through the rest of this study and be looking at some of these bits of wisdom that we can learn from Solomon, all right? So we're going to begin in, like I said, 1 Kings chapter 3. We're going to start with verses 4 and 5. I'm going to turn it over to Mark and let him read those for us.
And the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." Most people would love to have God offer to give them anything they ask for, because it sounds kind of like the old genie in a bottle type situation. So, how do you suppose most folks would have responded to God's offer, "Ask me what you want"?
Unlimited wealth.
Huh?
Unlimited wealth.
Unlimited wealth. That's probably not the top of the list. It's right there, top 3 anyway. What else?
Youth.
Youth. That's a good one.
Power.
One I'd want again, but power. What would you ask for?
Good health.
Good health. That's a big.
The mind of Jesus.
The mind of Jesus. That's a really good one. So, what do you think the average person would ask for if God just gave them a blank check? Anything else besides what you've already mentioned? I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and throw out things that are scriptural and biblical and make us sound righteous. But I mean, if this really happened, is that what would be the first thing that came to your mind? I see husband and wife back there going, no. No.
I'd ask for a one-way ticket to heaven right now.
Ah, a one-way ticket. You know, I think, what do you think is one of the primary, not differences, the primary categories. That's still not a good word. Earthly. Well, yeah, we would probably tend to think of earthly things, but I'm trying to. I'll throw it out. Do you think age would make a difference? Because most of us in here, we got some young folks in here. We got a baby in here. But most of us in here are older, and I think our answer to that question now would be much different than it would have been when we were 20. You know, you wouldn't ask for you being young again when you were 20, right? You'd ask for that bundle of money probably, yeah, or power or whatever. Or what?
Family.
I'm glad you said family because I thought you said an animal.
I think a lot of it too not only depends on our age, but what our particular situation is right now. You know, if somebody's really struggling with something in particular, and God said, "What do you want?" Their mind's probably going to go to that thing, right? You know, do what?
Yeah, that's what
yeah.
That's a good example.
Yeah, if someone's terminally ill, they're probably going to be, ask for that illness to be taken away, to be healed completely, and not ask for the money. And like David, hopefully, our answer would be, give us the heart of Christ, give us the mind of Christ. We want to be like Solomon was, that we'll get into in a second here, But if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of us, I think, would ask selfishly based on where we're at in our lives.
Spiritual maturity obviously makes a huge difference where we would go with it. A person's spiritual maturity.
All right, so let's now move down and look at the next couple of verses. And so this is verses 6 through 9. And Solomon said, so God's asking him, tell me what you want, Solomon. Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father, although I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people?" So what is it that Solomon asked for right here? Wisdom. Okay? Now, based on what he said, and he uses a little bit of flowery language here, okay? But based on what we read there, where is Solomon in his life? I'll put it that way. He's young, okay? He admits he's young. He says, "I'm but a youth," okay? That doesn't mean he was a 12-year-old kid running around, okay? But he was young, all right? So what has Solomon said in this passage that he has done already as king? He kind of mentions one specific thing here. Look at verse 8 right there. Okay, he's out among the people. And notice he says they're too numerous to be counted, too many to be numbered or counted, a great multitude. It's a great people, the people God has chosen. And Solomon's basically saying, you've put me in charge of them. I'm the king over them. And I'm out among them and I'm seeing what's going on. And so then that leads in verse 9 for him to say what? To ask for what? Wisdom. Lord, just give me some wisdom to do what? To govern. Let me be a good king, Lord. Now, again, think about where Solomon is. Okay, he's young, we've noted that, but what else has he pointed out in the previous verses? Who was his father? David. Okay, probably the greatest king that Israel ever had or would ever have, because after Solomon, the kingdom would divide, right? Okay, and there'd be all kind of trouble. All right, Saul was not the best of kings. Okay, David, and you go throughout the rest of biblical history, even into the New Testament, who's the king that they always refer back to? It's David. Okay? So Solomon's saying, my father David was great, and you've blessed him, and you've put me as his descendant on the throne here, and I see all these people. I just want to be able to lead wisely. I want to be able to govern these people that you have given. And notice he says, give me an understanding mind to govern, that I may do what? Discern, keep going. Okay, between good and evil, or right or wrong. Okay? Solomon, he doesn't want to be thought of necessarily right here as a great king by the people. He wants to be able to govern them well and be able to distinguish between good and evil. Why do you think that he would say that? Okay, his daddy raised him well, okay? Why else?
In chapter 2, his dad, like what he's saying, David charges Solomon in terms of now that he's going to be taking his place, what he gave him the advice as to what he needs to do in order to rule, and that was, be strong, act like a man, observe what the Lord requires, walk in obedience, keep his decrees and commands, laws and regulations written by Moses. So in order for him to do that, he knew he would have to have some type of knowledge and
A
understanding.
discerning, yeah.
Okay.
But his dad had,
Right.
Right.
to do.
And that's exactly right. David has charged him to do this. If you think back, also, Saul reigned about 40 years as king. David reigned about 40 years as king. Okay? As good a king as David was, what were a couple of the big hallmarks of Saul and David both as kings? Well, murder, okay, but a little more broadly than that. Okay, Saul for sure didn't really follow God's commands. Okay,
Disobedient.
disobedient. Okay,
I think he wants to know how can we figure good for evil, because sometimes evil looks good and sometimes good looks evil, so I need to know which is which.
okay. I think that Solomon's probably looking back, and I'm sure that he's been taught, history. He's been taught about what kind of a king Saul was, and now he knows his own family history. I'm sure he knew what his father David had done. As good a king as David was not perfect. He made some mistakes. And so I think at this point, at the beginning of his reign, Solomon's like, I don't want to make the same mistakes they made. I want to be able to discern between good and evil. I want to be a good king. I want to rule these people well. So he asks for wisdom. Okay? We're kind of getting bogged down here. We've got to move on. All right, but just go ahead.
I want to make one point before we move to the next passage. If you look at verse 9, and I don't know if any of your versions would have this, but I think it's extremely important. It says, give your servant therefore an understanding mind. That word, or that word understanding in the Hebrew is literally a listening mind. Now, the word mind, it probably in some of your versions, is there a different word than mind? Heart. So what he's asking for from God is to give him, he's asking God to give him a listening heart in order to govern my people, your people. So what does that indicate? What is he asking for there? How would you put it in your own words? What is a listening heart? In other words, Chris?
Someone who sees his people. Let's talk about rightly judging too, because you have to go in and see them.
Right.
That's not a natural thing. That's supposed to be developed.
Okay. Dana?
Mine has a discerning heart.
A discerning heart,
So
yeah.
you have to really understand what you're making a decision.
Yeah.
You have to listen and understand.
What is it? And there's some insinuation here, I guess. But what is he asking God to
Help him
help
listen
him
to.
listen to? Well,
He wants to be empathetic with people.
he wants to what?
He wants to be sympathetic.
Okay, listen to the people, but ultimately, what is he wanting to, what should he be listening to, Chris? To God's Word, to the Word, to the Scripture. And know, understand the Scripture in order to apply it to the lives of the people he's governing. I think that's what he's asking for.
And again, I think it goes back to him knowing how Saul was, and even to a certain extent how his own father David was. They made their mistakes. They didn't listen to God all the time. They turned away from him, and he saw, the results of that.
What does Jesus say? Let him
Who has,
let him hear.
yeah, ears to hear, let him hear.
Ears to hear, and that's what he's asking for. And we read Scripture all the time. Do we always listen to it? No, we don't. Let's be honest. That's what he's asking for. I believe.
And I think it's also a testament to how wise he already was. Because he was only 18. Being 18 years, when I was 18, I wouldn't ask that.
For those of you who couldn't hear it, Matt said Solomon was only 18 at this point, and Matt said when he was 18, he wouldn't be asking for this. He wouldn't want to listen. So Solomon's already showing some wisdom beyond his years. He's already showing some maturity here when he asks God for that discerning heart, for that listening heart. All right, let's move to verse 10. We're going to just read one verse here. I think it's your turn, Mark.
It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. So, why do you think God was pleased that Solomon had asked for wisdom?
Well, it's kind of like you passed the test.
It's kind of what?
It's kind of like
You passed the test.
Pass the test, okay?
He could have asked for anything. Like if you ask your kid, hey, do you want this healthy meal or do you want this pile of cookies, and they pick the healthy meal, you're kind of happy,
Yeah.
disappointed, but happy.
You know you've taught them
well.
more or
Yeah.
less.
I
Yeah.
get the cookies.
What did Solomon's response tell God about Solomon? I mean, he already knew, but I do think this was a way of testing Solomon. Chris, I think that was your hand.
It shows humility because natural leaders, especially when they're in a position like, and this is saying, hey, I don't know what to do, I'm fully dependent on you.
Humility. What else?
That he would be an obedient servant.
He shows that he was an obedient servant or wanted to be an obedient servant. There's still another word I'm looking for. Instead of asking for a pile of money, what's he asking for?
I find it interesting that he is asking for the exact same thing that God kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden for. Because he asked for that, and God said, well, I'm going to kind of give you that. But I find it interesting. So somewhere along the line, Solomon learned a lesson from that, which was not much closer removed than we are. But I find it very interesting. He wanted that same thing that he knew
Yes.
he shouldn't have.
But what's the difference between Adam and Eve and Solomon?
Adam and Eve were told to go.
Without asking,
Solomon
being told
says,
not to.
Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead.
They took it without asking and being told not to.
Who did they take it for?
Themselves.
Who is Solomon asking for? For his people.
People.
The Lord's people that he's governing.
But he was asked, what do you want for you? And he said, I want to be a good governor. So I want what
Yeah.
they couldn't have. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a little shaky on this one.
Well, you'll have to take that up with the Lord. Because he said it was good. David, you had your hand, and then I saw
Ralph had his hand.
And Matt.
I was just gonna say, one is self-seeking, the other is other-seeking.
Well, that's the word I was looking for, was unselfish. I think that's what Solomon's response told the Lord about him. He's being unselfish.
Solomon was still
Well, and there's another difference too, Shane, is who Adam and Eve or Eve was having her conversation with versus who Solomon was having his.
Yeah, I mean, women are bad. We know.
Oh, boy. Oh, man.
We're going to have a stoning in this auditorium one of these days.
Listen, it's biblical.
It is just.
Oh, my
Go
goodness.
ahead.
Yeah, and I think the big part was that Adam and Eve were told, hey, do not eat this.
Yeah.
And then they went and did it for their own selfish gain so that they could know everything they could possibly know. So it was a direct violation. When God said, hey, what do you want? He said, can you give me what I need to
Yeah.
be the best person in this position that you put me
Yeah.
in? So God was
That-
very pleased with that.
That's another difference between the two scenarios that Shane brought up.
And one other one I'll throw in there too is that Satan, they were listening to Satan, and Satan telling them, if you do this, you'll be like God. And that was the big temptation for them. They wanted to be on an equal plane with God, and Solomon's not looking for that. It doesn't seem like here.
But then again, is he?
I mean, I don't see that from the context here.
He's asking to be a good king forever. Is that selfish or not? I mean, one could argue either way.
Well, but look at the language. Look at verse 7, for instance. The last part of verse 7. I do not know how to go out or come in. Well, again, what does that indicate? Humility.
But then he's asking for longevity. He's asking for a very big thing to rule people for a very long time. I mean, like I said, he learned his lesson. He learned well from his.
Well, I'm not sure where you're getting.
I don't want to say it's not completely without any selfish ambition.
Okay.
Just on the surface, because he asked for something. God actually gave him something different than what he asked for. So that tells you something. God didn't give him just what he asked for. Yeah, he's got humility in there, but I don't, I mean, he wants to be a great leader.
Right.
That's fine. There's
I don't know where you
nothing
get the
wrong with
longevity. I don't see
that.
that.
Well, he watched other kings before him fall and have
Right.
problems, and he probably said, well, I don't want to be like that.
I think verse 11 will help.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what Randy's going to read that portion, but that's what I've got in my Bible out on the wrote in on the what do you call that? The fringe.
Margins.
Unselfish.
Mhm.
Unselfish. Because God. Now this is not me, Shane. This is God saying, because you didn't ask this thing, or you have asked this thing and have not asked for yourself long life,
We're well.
nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but you've asked for yourself discernment to understand what? Justice. God is perfectly just. So, again, God was pleased with this. And God knows our hearts. God knew the heart of Eve, Adam, and he knew the heart of Solomon. Now, that doesn't mean that Solomon's heart always remained pure, because we know it didn't. But at this point, it was from a pure heart, an unselfish heart, that he was asking this.
At the beginning, you had a question up there about asking about something or pretending, I forget what the question was, but you don't know what's going on. You admit it and ask her. Okay, where I'm going with this is Solomon grew up. He knew, come on, if you're the son of a king, you've seen a lot. You know the problems that they face.
Right.
And
I think ultimately that is the answer, is the difference in the purity and the sincerity of their hearts in these two different situations.
All right, so let's look at 11 through 15, and Mark's pretty much already read 11. We'll go over it real quick. God said to Solomon, because you have asked this for wisdom and discernment, a discerning heart, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, and those are things he could have asked for, you know. And I think it's interesting, that last part there, the life of your enemies, you know. Solomon's already got some enemies, apparently. But that's not something that he asked God, you know, kill my enemies or take them away or, you know, punish them or whatever, you know.
Well, you read the Psalms, that's exactly what his daddy's asking for at times in the Psalms.
Yep. But have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right. Behold, I now do according to your word. In other words, God said, I'm going to give you that. Okay? Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days. And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Then he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord and offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings and made a feast for all his servants. So the next question is, why do you suppose God went on to grant Solomon fame and fortune, two things that he had not asked for?
He probably felt that he could handle them and would do well with them.
Okay.
Based on the question, but he also gave him the caveat.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he credited David as being one who was good and walked in his ways. Although we know
Mm-hmm.
he didn't always do that, but in totality,
Right.
you could say he did.
Mm-hmm.
It positioned him better in order to be able to be a wise king.
Absolutely.
He was a broke, run-down king, who would come to him?
Mm-hmm.
Though he's smart, who's going to come to him?
It goes back to the illustration Matt gave a minute ago. You know, if you offer your child the healthy meal, you know, on a plate or a plate of cookies, and they choose the healthy meal, you're going to be proud of them for that. And then what are you likely to do? I'm going to give you the cookies as dessert. You know, good job. You know, it's almost like a reward for doing the right thing, at least, you know, to a certain extent.
But Shane brings up a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same as our salvation. All of this was conditional. You know, if you look, at least in the New American Standard, it's if, then. And that's, you know, that's conditional. And that's, our salvation is the same way. It's not once saved, always saved. It's conditional on walking in the light as he is in the light, remaining faithful until death or unto death.
All right, so now we're going to go over or go down to verse 16. One of the very famous stories that we look at. Go ahead, David.
Just one quick question.
Uh-huh.
How was he able to go before the ark when he was not the high priest? Because Uzziah was, when he tried that, he was popped. How come he got to do that? Because he wasn't the high priest.
Well, Uzziah touched it, which was the forbidden thing, and that's why he was struck down. And of course, David was moving it in an unauthorized way. I think, given the context here, I don't think it's implying that Solomon offered the sacrifice himself as a priest. I think he went to where the ark was and brought the sacrifices and let the priest do it. But he's the one bringing it, so, and you see that all throughout the Old Testament. Whoever's the one bringing it is often said to be making the sacrifice. They're the one giving it. The priest would be the one to kill it and actually put it on the altar. Okay? So I don't think that it's saying that he took the place of the priest. Now, I could be wrong, okay, but
Elijah said he stood.
Yeah.
stood before the Ark of the Covenant. I think,
He stood, he's in the Holy of Holies, which he ain't supposed to be there.
well, I don't,
I ain't coming across the problem.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Well, the temple's not built yet, is it?
No, we're still in the tabernacle.
Tabernacles.
But there was still the Holy of Holies.
Right, there was I think, we have to insinuate, or we have to infer that he stood before the ark, but he was outside of the Holy of Holies.
Well, I think one thing.
Because that's where the altar was.
Was where?
Outside the Holy of Holies.
One thing you can know for sure, he did not offer those sacrifices because if he had, God would not give him the promise.
Absolutely.
That would have broke the conditions.
At the end of it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so we come to a part now, a very famous story about Solomon, where he exercises this wisdom and this discerning heart that God has given him. And I think it's your turn to read, Mark 16 through 22.
Then 2 prostitutes came to the king, this is still Solomon, and stood before him. The one woman said, "Oh, my Lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house. Then on the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman also gave birth. And we were alone, no witnesses. There was no one else with us in the house. Only we two were in the house. And this woman's son died in the night because she lay on him. And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while your servant slept, and laid him on her breast, and laid her dead son at my breast. When I rose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him closely in the morning, behold, he was not the child that I had borne." But the other woman said, "No, the living child is mine, and the dead child is yours." The first said, "No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine." Thus they spoke before the king. All right, so imagine that you're a judge, and these 2 women are arguing in your court today. What's going to be your first reaction?
Put them in jail for being prostitutes.
Okay.
Take the kid, call CPS.
CPS.
Well, today is DNA.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of, was just do a DNA test, but they didn't have that back then. Anybody else besides throw them in jail? You can't top that one.
Well, if you couldn't decide to take the baby and place him somewhere else.
Take the baby from both of them, is what you're saying? Yeah, give it to someone else.
My first thought was, these women weren't thinking very far ahead, because if they knew they was gonna have to send him to college, neither one of them.
Oh, boy.
We're thinking 21st century, aren't we?
All right, well, let's see how Solomon handled it. I think we all are familiar with the story, but let's keep reading here. 1 Kings 3.
That's why nobody's responding.
Yeah, I know. They know the answer.
They know what happened.
23 through 28. Then the king said, the one says, "This is my son that is alive, and your son is dead." And the other says, "No, but your son is dead, and my son is the living one." And the king said, "Bring me a sword." So a sword was brought before the king. And the king said, "Divide the living child in 2, and give half to the one and half to the other." Then the woman whose son was alive said to the king, because her heart yearned for her son, "Oh, my lord, give her the living child, and by no means put him to death." But the other said, "He shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him." Then the king answered and said, "Give the living child to the first woman, and by no means put him to death. She is his mother." And all Israel heard of the judgment that the king had rendered, and they stood in awe of the king, because they perceived that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. So, what wisdom or insight did Solomon use to resolve this conflict? Okay, a little reverse psychology maybe, Chris?
He weighed the women's hearts.
Okay.
Going back to the beginning of this passage and the difference between Solomon and other people like we discussed, like Adam and Eve. God weighs our hearts. That's exactly what he did. He weighed the hearts of those ladies and they spoke.
He knew
Okay.
the power of a mother's love.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I know we've got to move on because we only got about 10 minutes here, but look at the reaction of the woman whose son had died. When Solomon said, what did she say? Yeah, I don't want, she's bitter. Her son has died. She's tried to steal the living son, and now so she's like, yeah, neither one of us is going to have one. She's bitter. So it's not just the mother's love that Solomon could see. He can also see now the bitterness of the one whose son has died. And I'm sure that helped him, even more. Okay, yeah, give it to the one who's, doesn't want him dead.
I'm sure she's grieving as well. I mean, do you think there's guilt there? You roll over and kills your own baby?
She has no.
Well, that's a good point. We don't know her heart, but she was a prostitute.
It's kind of a good indicator, isn't it?
Huh?
We know her actions, that's a kind of a good
Yeah.
indicator, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But look at what she did. She stole the living baby. She wanted a baby. She wanted that child, So, Shane, I don't know what we're going to do with you in this class.
Well,
I know. I love it. All righty. All right, now we're going to move to chapter 4. Okay, so we've seen that Solomon exercises wisdom. God's given him the discerning heart. He's governing the people well. This is one of the most famous examples. So now we go to chapter 4 and look at verses 29 through 34.
and God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding beyond measure, and breadth of mind like the sand on the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all other men, wiser than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahal, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He spoke also of beasts, and of birds, and of reptiles, and of fish. And people of all nations came to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. So, what's a proverb? A wise saying. Any other definitions?
Kind of an analogy.
An analogy, okay.
You describe one thing by using other terms to describe it.
Okay. A proverb is a short or pithy saying that describes how the world works or prescribes how an individual should act in order to have a good life. And most cultures use proverbs to teach wisdom. What are some of the proverbs from our own culture? And what does that proverb that you think of teach?
Now, right now, I don't think of necessarily biblical proverbs, but just proverbs from our society. What goes around comes around.
What does that mean? What goes around comes around goes around? What does that mean? Goes around comes around. Okay, what you dish out will come back to you. What was the other one over here?
David said, "A penny saved is a penny earned."
Okay, what does that mean? What's that teach?
Thrift.
Be thrifty. Okay. Any others?
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Okay.
By the way, that's not from the Bible, y'all. Okay. One I've been hearing around here, especially lately, is many hands make light work. Y'all know that one? Okay. Any others you can think of? Slow and steady wins the race. What's that? I hadn't heard that one. Alrighty.
Look before you leap.
Loose lips sink ships.
Don't cry over spilled milk. There's a lot of them when you start to think about it.
So a proverb is distilled wisdom. Okay? It's the essence of wisdom about a particular aspect of life. Spanish novelist Cervantes once defined a proverb as a short sentence based on long experience. Okay? So in the 5 minutes we have left, let's begin looking at at least one of the Proverbs of Solomon. We're going to go to Proverbs chapter 1, the book of Proverbs chapter 1, and look at verses 1 through 6. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. To understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. In your opinion, what's the difference between information and wisdom? Okay, wisdom is knowing what to do with the information that you have. Okay? And I would even go a step beyond and say what? Because there's a difference between knowing what to do with it and what? And actually doing it. Okay?
Information is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is knowing you don't put it in a fruit salad.
Okay. Chris, you had your hand up? Okay, wisdom has been tested. Okay. What are some things that a young person would learn from this book, the book of Proverbs, that they wouldn't get from the internet? And that's a big, broad question there.
How to say big words.
Okay. What was that?
You got the King James Version, how to say big words.
How to say big words if you have the King James Version. Oh, boy. All right.
What kind of wisdom is found in Proverbs?
Godly wisdom. Godly.
Common sense or uncommon sense. That's what we call this.
All right, so let's look at a proverb here in verse 7. Excuse me. I think it's your turn.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay, so let me get down to my notes here. This verse is essentially the theme of the Proverbs, of Solomon's Proverbs. What do you think the fear of the Lord means, and why do you suppose the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge? Chris?
Most people read and they think fear in that context is like we think of fear, just afraid. Fear is also trust, understanding. And if you trust in God and His Word, you don't have to spend so much time exhausting what the world tells you.
Okay.
You know this is the absolute.
Yeah, this is truth.
When you fear God, you heed instruction by reading the Bible.
When you fear God, you heed instruction from.
And whenever you read the Bible, you gain the knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. Why should we fear God? What elicits our fear of God? Reverence, submission, knowing who He is, and understanding that we ain't Him. We're nowhere close to Him. He's the Creator. We're the created. Dana, you had your hand up.
Well, I was kind of headed that way. It's the start of wisdom because you understand the source of where you're listening.
Yeah,
And the fear of, you know God, you trust God,
yeah,
you believe God. People believe stuff on the internet, and they think it's the end-all answer.
yeah. Well,
That's sending down that road. If you fear God, you know, like the verse is saying, it's the beginning of knowledge. You know you're at a good place.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, look at it, think about it the other way around. If you don't fear God, is reading this book going to do you any good? Because you don't have the proper perspective. You don't have the proper, you don't have reverence for who wrote it, who's responsible for it.
All right, so our summary statement as we close, okay? It may sound funny to say admitting that your ignorance is the first step towards wisdom, but a know-it-all won't listen to God, while a humble person will. Solomon learned from his experience that when you have the humility to confess your ignorance, God is able to give you wisdom and so much more. So our first principle of uncommon sense wisdom is know what you don't know, or trust God, because He does know. All right, so next week we're going to read the rest of Proverbs 1 to learn the second principle of uncommon sense wisdom, and that is stay on the right paths, avoid troublemakers. That'll be our topic for next week. Mark won't be here. He will have hopefully arrived safely in Panama, and we may have a guest panelist with us next week and for the next 2 Wednesdays, because I don't really want to do it by myself. So anyway, but read the rest of Proverbs 1 for next week, and we appreciate you being here and your comments and your attention. Oh yes, we need help in the back setting up some tables if you're able.